So we are back here at Lucioso's, our temporary recording studio. Since the craft beer cellar is having flooding, make sure you check out the craft beer cellar and check out Lucioso's Pub in Plymouth for wings and pizza. Those are not time sensitive; they are always there. And we are here with Laura Thompson. Correct? Did I got that right?
Correct.
All right, I got the name right. And author. Who we met at one of our paint nights at Games and Cocktails.
Okay.
And so you are, so this is going up in January, so will your book be out by then?
Yes, it's supposed to, the electronic copies are out now on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Smashwords, basically anywhere that you can download e-version. And the print copies, there's been some slowdowns with the printing, but they'll be out at the end of November.
And what is the title?
It's called The Burden of Destiny, Elven Quest Book 1.
Book 1. So obviously there's going to be more books.
This is a series, yes.
So give us a brief synopsis.
So the book is about a young girl, she's 14 when the story starts. Her name is Isabel, and she believes that she's human, grew up in a small village, and she's a farm girl. But she always feels a little different than all of her friends. She feels like she can sense things before they happen. She can hear things further away than most people. And there's a lot of times that she voices these things to people and they think that she's nuts. So she always kind of feels out of place. And her soul always feels restless and like she'd like to be traveling and having some adventures. And she doesn't know why. And then one day there's some trouble in the town, and she senses that there's danger coming, but nobody's talking about it. All the adults are acting really suspicious. So her and her friend try to figure it out, and they end up meeting this old woman in the woods who they never met before. And she tells them that their village is indeed in danger, that there's these large creatures that have been hidden away in kind of the dark corners of the world, and they're coming back out and seeking out certain people, and that her villagers aren't going to be able to stop them because they have magic. So then she thinks that this old lady is nuts because nobody's ever heard of magic, and that's not something that, everybody uses. But for whatever reason, she trusts her, so she listens to her. And come to find out, and this isn't a spoiler because it says right in the title, Elven Quest, she finds out that she's half-elf, and her mother was an elf, and she never knew her mother for very long. She died when she was real little, so she doesn't remember her. So then she learns that her mother was from a famous sea elf family, and there's 4 different types of elven groups, and her mother's group...
Are they all kind of like based on the elements?
Yeah. Earth, air, fire, and water. And her mother's group obviously can manipulate water. So she has the power to also be able to manipulate water if she studies and practices and learns the language and the magic. So she has to do that. She has to find out from this woman that, this isn't the end of the darkness that's coming, and she has a big role to play in trying to stop it and save her people. And there's a reason why, which I don't want to really spoil, but...
Yeah, don't give us some spoilers.
Yeah. So anyway, she has to learn this magic and be able to kind of stop this evil that's coming into her world and, is dooming her people. And her friends and some mentors and people that she meets along the way help her do that.
So is this kind of a trilogy, or is there kind of like a whole ongoing series?
The first book ties into the second book, and then that's concluded. But I leave it open enough that I wasn't sure where I was going to go with it after that. I wrapped it in 2 stories, but then I still saw the characters in my head. I still wanted to write more. I just didn't know what to do from them. And then one day I started thinking about what else, could happen with these characters in this world, and I got some more ideas for what is turning out to be a 3rd and 4th book.
Okay.
So they'll be similar, same characters and stuff, but different timelines, different even area. So it's not going to be the same.
So the first story is 2 books.
The first 2 books.
You still have kind of like other stories on that world. So it's obviously there's elves and magic. Are there other magical? Well, you mentioned magical creatures, but is it more of a traditional sword and sorcery type, like dragons and dwarves and all that stuff, or just kind of
similar. I don't think it's a copycat of Tolkien or anything like that. But there's some in fantasy. I feel like there are similar creatures that you bring into a lot of fantasy stories, and then there are some that I made up on my own that are kind of unique. So yeah, there's definitely other magical beings and other creatures.
And so you mentioned Tolkien. I assume he was somewhat of an influence on it.
He was, yeah. I think any fantasy writer, if they tell you that Tolkien was not an influence, I think they're lying because...
even if they never read Tolkien or watched the movies, they're still influenced by them because everybody else is.
Exactly.
So there's no way you can't be influenced.
He was just such a godfather of fantasy. Like, you can't deny that because he made up, an entire language that turned into a real, elven language. He made it all up and, people speak it now.
Yeah, I saw an interview where Peter Jackson talking about, designing the look of Gandalf the movie, and he's kind of like, oh, this is kind of cliche. And he's like, wait, this is where the cliche came from.
Cliche.
He's like, this is what started it.
Yeah, exactly.
So it didn't make sense to do anything else.
Yeah, actually, it was the movie version of the Lord of the Rings first one that really got me thinking about the element version of the elves, because there's that scene. For anybody that's seen the movie, when the river run elf is standing in the water and she's trying to block
the ring race.
From getting the hobbits, and so she, does the magic spell that makes the river turn into a herd of horses. And when that happened, I went, wow, that's awesome. And then from that, I started thinking about. I'm also a big fan of Harry Potter. So I started thinking about J.K. Rowling's version of elves are house elves that are the slaves to the wizards, and they're little tiny people, and supposedly they have really great magic, but you never really figure out why or what it is because it's controlled by the wizards.
They don't really do.
Yeah, they don't do anything except disappear and reappear.
Right.
So I just started thinking about the differences between her idea of an elf looks completely different from his idea of the elves, and the magic is completely different. I thought, wow, I wish that J.K. wrote, because I love her writing style. Yeah. And I thought, what do we need if she wrote a story that was about elves, but it was more like Tolkien's version of the elves that could control the elements and things like that. And then I just, I kept thinking about it, and the characters started popping into my head, the storyline popped into my head, and I thought, well, why am I going to sit here and wait for J.K. Rowling to write it? I'll write it myself.
Right, yeah.
So then I just
So is this the first book you've ever written, or
This is the first novel I've ever written. I've been writing since I was a kid, and when I was a kid it was short stories, and then in high school I had a creative writing teacher who kind of helped me expand a basic short story line and basically taught me how to expand the details and the conversation between characters and things like that to branch it out into a longer version. So he really taught me how to do novel writing, and in his class I started writing my first, what I would consider a novella, because it's very short, it's 70 pages. So, but I wrote that in his class when I was 16, and I still have it in little binders.
Do you ever go back and read it and be like, oh?
I haven't in a long time. I will eventually. My goal is to eventually put it onto a computer and
I always find that's kind of an interesting thing to go back and look at older stuff. And it's one of two things where you're like, hey, this isn't bad. Or you're like, oh god, what was I thinking?
I'm sure it's very dramatic and very childish because I was 16, so in the midst of teen realm.
Yeah. So you said you're inspired by Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. Are there other fantasy? I mean, those are obviously two things. But what other fantasy things inspire?
There's lady. I'm gonna blank on her name, but she writes a book. The series called the Pelennor books, Pelennor series. Research. Alison Grogan, I think her name is. And those were really good too. I really liked, because she kind of does a Tolkien-esque style. It's very old-fashioned. It's very dry. Like, she describes everything in great detail. So her books I really liked. And then The Wheel of Time, I liked that one. I actually listened to that one on on an audiobook because they're so long. They're so long. And I think I got through half of it. My husband's a huge fan of it. So I listened to some of it with him, but I haven't even finished it because there's like 13 books and they're all 1,400 pages. So eventually I'll finish it, but that's a decent series.
When you write, do you have like a very clear picture of like your characters and the setting?
Oh yeah. I think for me it's like watching a movie in my mind, and I can clearly, hear and see all the details and see the characters, and they're like real people to me. I mean, I talk about them like they're real people, and I have to remind myself that nobody knows what you're talking about.
So, like you said, it's like a movie. Do you cast people in the role?
I do.
So who would you cast as the main character you would?
She's probably not that young, really, but the girl that's on Gotham show. Have you seen that show that plays Cat?
I've not seen that, but I know of it.
I don't know her name, but she's awesome.
She's like 15.
Yeah, oh yeah.
She's 15,
so
16,
she'd be perfect for this role. There you go.
As long as she's not aging right now.
When I do a movie, I need to play my character, so don't age. But yeah, she would be awesome. That's the main character, I think. Or even the girl's, Isabel's best friend is also I would consider a main character, and she's pretty snappy and, has a big personality, so I could see that girl playing her too.
Yeah. What is your kind of target audience? Is it a young adult book? Or?
Well, my brother and niece read it together. She was 11, I want to say, at the time. And my brother was telling me that, she loved it. She talked about it with all friends and all that stuff. He felt that some of the content went slightly over her head, but that's probably a good thing because I feel like it's layered. The messages in it are kind of layered so that, younger people, probably 10 and maybe 8-year-olds if they're really decent readers, but 8 to 10 and 12, they'll get the adventure, the magic, a little bit of the love story, but not much. They'll enjoy that part of it, the good versus evil.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that makes Harry Potter so great.
Right.
Is you
but then underneath it,
you can read it more. My son read that years ago and he loved it.
Yeah. There's all these other themes and storylines. I mean, Harry Potter is blatantly, if you're an adult reading it, it's blatantly about World War II. Hitler and the Nazis. You think about Voldemort and his followers and what they do to the to the mudbloods. It's very clearly she was talking about the Nazis. So, but kids wouldn't get that, and it's the same with mine. I feel like there are certain themes I talk about global warming in some ways, and I talk about protecting each other and.
So it's like Birdemic.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen Birdemic?
No. I
haven't. Birdemic is an incredibly bad movie where the birds strike back at the humans because of global warming.
Well, yeah, basically. I mean, I talk about.
No! Don't ever compare your book to Birdemic.
Not that bad. But if I actually talk about, if we as a race sit around and do nothing to protect these elements, then they're going to eventually strike back and wipe us all out. So, we need to work together to do that. And that's a big thing a big theme, working together, looking past your differences, because there's 4 different races of elves, and they all believe different things, they've all experienced different things, and then there's humans too that obviously they have their experiences and their beliefs, and they're all different. So, yet all of these groups have to work together, they have to come together to be able to fight the evil and stop it from destroying the world as they know it. And only by working together will they accomplish that. So that's my message that I'm trying to get out there is that, we're all different. We all have different, experiences, different religions, different races, different backgrounds. It doesn't really matter at the core because we're all people. Mm-hmm. So, we need to find the commonalities that we have and use those to work together. Especially in light of this last election, I feel like our country's pretty divided. And,
I would say that's a fair comment.
I think now more than ever, people need to start looking at the positives with each other and trying to spread those messages of peace and unity. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Nice. Good message. And it's got to be a great feeling. I know I love being able to share art and music with my kids. Mm-hmm. You said your niece read it?
Yeah.
And loved it. Talked about it with her friends. I mean, that's got to be a
it's
super
awesome.
cool feeling.
It's so awesome, yeah. she's actually going to help me promote it. She texts me and she's like, "What can I do to help you promote it this week?"
That's nice.
She's awesome.
So you said it's out now on digital download.
Mm-hmm.
And how's the response been so far?
It's been good. It's been a little slow, but
Yeah.
they told me that would be the case. It's all about, promotion and talking to people about it and
getting the word out.
trying to get the word out. So I'm doing. I was a nobody on social media. I had, the one Facebook account for family only, and that was it. And then, obviously since then I've branched out. I'm now on Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, which I never really use. Facebook. I have my author Facebook page, and then I started a blog, and I do a blog mostly about writing topics. How to write, how to stay inspired. I'm going to go into the publishing world a little bit, but just basically anything that strikes me about writing and that creative lifestyle.
Where can you find the blog at?
Blog is at, I just want to make sure I say it right, Laura Thompson, author.blogspot.com. And that'll have the links to all my other, accounts, my Facebook, and all that stuff.
Nice. Do you put stuff up weekly, monthly, or kind of like just whenever?
It started as monthly. I'm now trying to do every 2 weeks. So.
Yeah. So, is there a character in your book that is representative of you?
I got the same question. So I went back home recently to Vermont, where I'm originally from, and did a speech at my high school to some of the English classes there, which was so awesome and such a weird experience because I was petrified of high school when I was in high school.
Yeah.
Scared of my own shadow and so shy. And to go back there and stand up in front of all those kids and then have them say things to me like, "So when did you really make it?" And I was thinking to myself, wait, you think I made it?
Yeah, wait, did I make it? When did that happen?
Wow. So to do that was just awesome. But they asked me the same thing, and I told them, I think all of the characters have a piece of me in them in some way, but definitely the main character, Isabel, is me as a teenager. Her emotions and the stuff that she goes through is exactly kind of the way I felt magnified.
Is it kind of a new adaptation of that novella that you wrote?
Yeah, in a way.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I think, that character too. I think really as a writer, all of your characters are inspired by something or somebody.
Yeah.
And, the other characters, the sub-characters in the books are inspired by people. And it's, bits of people. And sometimes I don't even really realize until somebody says that to me. They're like, "Oh, this reminds me of, such and such." Oh, yeah. It does remind me of that person or this event or this whatever. So sometimes as I'm writing it, I don't even realize that, but then I realize it after.
Kind of subconscious, or you need that outside perspective.
Yeah.
So you said you were very heavily influenced by a high school teacher. Did you get them a copy? If they had a chance
Mr. Severance. Mr. Severance, if you're listening, I'd like to find you. He doesn't work at Essex anymore.
If he listens to this, that would be so cool.
He's retired now, so I don't know if maybe the new principal can get me his information, but yeah, I'd love to give him a copy.
I feel like that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. And definitely I had other teachers along the way. I had a 6th grade teacher who, gave me an award for English for short story writing in 6th grade, and she told me then, if you stick to it, I could see you being a published writer, so stick to it. And I laughed and said, "Oh, thanks, oh, yeah, right." But it stuck with me, and it was something that, made me really happy to think back on now, that she thought that even then. So, and then I had, college professors that were super supportive and had been in the publishing industry, and they, told me a lot about it, what to, expect, how to get into it. So yeah, teachers, they rock.
Yeah, and it's kind of like I've talked with a lot of people and meet a lot of people. We talked about this on an earlier podcast where you see a lot of people who are like, "Oh, I'm going to do this story, or I have this idea, and I'm going to do this," and it's kind of like almost. Let's see, I don't know if pig-headedness is the right kind of term, but it's almost that where you have to be like, "No, I'm doing it," and even when you get bad feedback, you kind of fight through it. And So it's not for everyone. You have to have
you do have
really
to have a thick
skin.
skin.
Yeah.
You do. Yeah. I was turned down. I don't mind saying it. I was turned down 15 times, and then had more unanswered letters. And I think that's, as a young writer, you just got to know that that's all part of the process, and it doesn't mean you're a bad writer. It doesn't mean you're never going to make it. You just got to stick with it,
right.
And you got to believe in what you're doing. You got to believe in yourself and believe in your product.
And it's part of like that little kid being like, "Oh, when did you make it?"
Right.
It's you almost. I feel like there's almost more. I don't want to say that like you have to feel like you make it, but you have to give up the perception that yes, I'm a professional. This is this is what I do, and people take you as seriously as you kind of take yourself.
Exactly.
So
and you have to keep going.
Yeah, if you're like, no one's gonna be like, oh, let me read it.
Right.
But if you're like, oh, I wrote a book and this is what it's about. Yeah,
read it.
You have to be your own champion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is really tough to do. Sometimes.
That's true for everything.
Yeah.
Not just creative lifestyle, but anything that you do.
Mm-hmm.
You have to believe in yourself, or you're gonna get nowhere. So.
Yeah, and let's face it, we don't believe in ourselves every day, all the time.
No.
And
and I still have a job. I still work 40 hours a week. This isn't making me rich right now, but that's not to say that it won't ever. Hopefully it will.
We'll get around. She was, wasn't she homeless when she?
Yeah, she was living in a van.
And that's...
And she was waitressing, I think, at night and or bartending or something. So.
Yeah. And you see that time and time again when these people go through these incredible struggles.
And I had to tell myself that, too. That helped, that she was turned down 12 times for Harry Potter. So, knowing that helped. Look at Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss was turned down, I can't even tell you how many times, by almost every single juvenile publisher that there was. They told him his stuff was way too far out, too different from everything else that kids were reading. It would never sell, it would never make it. He's now the #1 children's selling author of all time. So, you just believe what the critics say.
And it's critics and people who work in publishing about are very conservative. Because they're like, it's almost that they want the next Avengers movie.
Right.
Give me something that's just like the Avengers movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I know that comes. And so if you have something that's really kind of out of left field, they're really hesitant. So.
Yeah. And the problem, too, with rejection is that most of the time it's simply, oh, this isn't right for us right now.
Yeah.
That was what I got all the time.
Yeah.
Keep trying, but this isn't right for us right now. And that's tough because, okay, well, why isn't it right? What do I change to make it right for you? You know what I mean?
And do I want to change it?
Right. And then, you never get that feedback. Well, I was lucky enough to get that feedback. My publisher that I have, she actually has passed away now, but she called me. Her name is Kathy McGuire, and she's from Brighton Publishing, LLC. Mind-blowing. And she called me up on the phone in 2011 when I sent her my first letter, and she said to me, let's talk about your book and what you're trying to accomplish and, your story and all of that. And we just talked turkey for, I don't know, a half hour. And we talked about marketing it, my target audience and all that kind of thing. And she gave me some really good suggestions about, what things to cut out, maybe what things to change, why those changes are necessary if you want to market it. And then she just told me it has a lot of promise, but it does need some editing, and it does need some work. And if I were you, my suggestion would be to have it read by your target audience. So, young people, have it read by them and then get their feedback.
Yeah. And
then go with that. And she said, and if you do make changes and you edit it and you do some work and you get some feedback from people, contact me again and we'll talk about it again. So I did that for a year. I had it read by my niece. I had it read by my cousin through marriage, and some other young people, and had their responses back. And then I made some kind of creative changes to it. Did take a lot out of the beginning, but took about 100 pages out of the beginning because it was really long. And I realized it was really repetitive. I was kind of saying the same things over and over. So I took out a lot of that and kind of condensed it, and then changed the ending slightly, so it not as big of a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Which was her suggestion. So, did all those changes, wrote back to her, explained, why and what I did, and why I think she should give it another look, and she did, and then, within a year, she was offering me a contract, so.
Nice. And that's one of those things where it's persistence, but it's also, it's part of that having a thick skin and not taking everything personally. I mean, you're going to have people, especially if you put stuff out online, that are like, oh, you suck, and your house should burn down, and your dog should die. But you're going to have people that be like, well, I didn't like it because of this character, and it's to take honest feedback and consider it.
Yeah.
And
constructive feedback is
but I feel like a lot of people, when they get that, especially starting off, they take offense to any criticism whatsoever. If you can't take criticism, you have a very hard time of life.
Exactly. And that's, I feel like that's a good lesson for anybody. It's not just, writers, but anybody. You gotta have, I learned that the hard way in business too. I'm in a corporate business situation. It's a very big company, and
what do you do for your day job?
I'm a tax consultant at State Street Bank.
Okay.
So it's a global company, and they're great in a lot of ways, but, it's tough. It's typical business. So, you're going to rub people the wrong way. You're going to have people yelling at you saying that they need this now and, all this kind of thing. And you have to learn to not take it personally. It's not you.
Right.
It's just the situation. And if you get upset over every little thing, you're going to spend the whole life fighting your nails or
I found it
her
very
out,
liberating to work for Home Depot when I realized that 90% of the time, if my boss was coming down on me, it wasn't him. It's because someone was giving him grief.
Right.
Above him.
That's the thing. You never know what's happening in other people's lives or why they're acting the way they are. So the only thing you can change is your own reaction.
Yeah, and you just don't take it personal. It's work and whatever. Granted, I didn't enjoy it there, but that was a lot of other things. But it's if you can take criticism, if you can be your own champion, regardless of what field you want to go into, that makes the world of it now. Even just going into a job, if you're confident in yourself, you will be far better than the person who doesn't feel that you get the job.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And my other suggestion, especially young people who are listening, would be the whole online presence. It's a great thing, but just be aware that what you're putting out there says something about you. And I stressed that when I went back to the high school that, my publisher told me that part of their process of elimination is taking the people that maybe they might be interested in and then Googling them and looking up all of their sites, anything that they have posted, and see, what they're putting out there. What do their pictures look like? What do they describe themselves as? If you're describing yourself as a party person that doesn't take life too seriously and, all you have is a bunch of party pictures, they're going to say, okay, this person is not somebody that we feel that we can have. That we can have a professional business relationship with. So, nope, and they'll put you in the no pile. And they told me they've turned people down for that reason only.
Yeah.
So
I have a friend of mine that has worked on some children's books, and he has 2 Facebook pages. One is his personal Facebook page that he's gonna put up whatever nonsense he feels like, and the other is, hey, I'm a children's book author. Artist, and because you could put something up slightly off color or very off color on your Facebook page that no one's going to look twice at, but if you're putting up a children's book, that's going to really make your life difficult because people are going to be like, I'm not going to give, regardless of what your book is, they look at that and then,
And it's the same for job interviews and all that. Employers are looking at all of that stuff. So, as a kid, if you're getting out of college or you're getting out of high school or whatever, and you're trying to get a job, just be aware of, the fact that they can easily look you up and see what you're doing. So you want to try to make a good first impression always. So just think before you post. That would be my opinion and advice.
You were talking about how you got connected with your publisher. If you were, how did you find a publisher? What was that process?
It's a lot of Google. So I just went, I basically, looked up, because I knew that my book was targeting YA, which is considered young adult, and it's fantasy. That narrows the field quite a bit, because you look up publishers that specify that they work with fantasy authors, and anybody that doesn't, you eliminate them. I just kind of created a spreadsheet of people's names, and I was going about it with the traditional method. There are several other methods of publishing nowadays, but traditionally you go in and you write what's known as a query letter in the industry, and sometimes they ask for a synopsis or sample writings or your bio. It just depends on the publisher. So you just kind of go in, and a lot of the big publishers, Penguin, Random House, all the big guys won't even look at your stuff without it being represented by an agent. So knowing that and finding that out via my search, I started applying for agents, looking for publishing agents, and then and small publishers, because small publishers often will work directly with the author. So that's what I did. Focused on those two areas, and then just sent out. And now it's all digital, so it's I think I found one that said they prefer snail mail, and I was like, really?
Wow, really?
I took them off my list.
Yeah.
So yeah, most all of them expect emails, and they'll tell you right in their website, this person is accepting, this person is not accepting, and this is what this person prefers. So you try to find something that matches your story, and go towards that person, and then you have to read their tab that explains what they expect. Because if you don't put in exactly what they expect, they'll eliminate you, completely, right from the start. So if they say, we want a synopsis 4 pages long, and a query letter 1 page long, and 10 pages of a sample letter, and you send them 50 pages of your book and nothing else, they're going to be, no, they didn't even read the instructions.
Right.
So I went through and did that. Just made a list for myself of. The other thing is, a lot of them will say, if we don't get back to you, we're busy. So if we don't get back to you in 6 months, you can try again. Just submit it again to the same person or a different person. So made a note of that as well, and then just went through and started sending, email after email, explaining who I was, what I was trying to do, what the book was about, all that, and then got some immediate rejections, and then got some, a few months later, and then, just kept going, kept trying, and in the meantime, I kept editing it as well. I went through and edited it probably 10 times. After the first initial edit that I had from my mother-in-law, actually edited it for me, so.
And I've heard some anecdotal stories. I don't know how true any of them are about people submitting work to stuff like that, and it almost being a policy where it's automatically rejected. The first time you submit something, no, automatically.
It might feel that way.
They kind of weed out who's really going to be.
It may feel that way. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but maybe for some.
Yeah.
For some of them. But I just felt like, I really believed in the book. I really believed in what the message was and what the story was, and I felt like it could sell. It has, potential to be marketable. So, my big thing was just trying to figure out the letter itself, how to make it exciting enough. There are websites that help you with that. So, you go on and read about how to write a really good query letter and,
with the internet now, it's super. You can learn anything.
Watch some YouTube videos.
YouTube is amazing. Anything that I need, I watch YouTube. It was last time about this year, a buddy of mine had a oyster, and I don't know how you get oysters. He hunted oysters or whatever, and I gave me a bag full of oysters. And I don't know how you're supposed to open these things, and I've always heard it was dangerous. And I went on YouTube and I looked it up and was like, oh, it's not hard at all. It's just amazing the information that's out there now available. That even not that long ago, your only option was to go to the library and hope they had a book that covered it, and that you track.
It's like ages ago, though, doesn't it?
Sometimes. I tell you, these last 6 episodes of this podcast that we've recorded did nothing but making me feel old. Because people are like, oh, when I was little I did this, and I'm like, really? When you were little? So that's been a bit of a wake-up call, I think, for the past few episodes. I'm going to get someone super old next week. I'm going to try anyways. mean, I would assume that you would really be really like for this to be made into a movie.
Oh my
But
God,
I feel like that's like every author. Yeah.
My dream.
But have you ever thought of kind of like working on other formats? Like we just had a comic book artist and they're like, you consider like writing a comic book or animated story of some kind.
Yeah, that I sort of have. I started. It's really a more of a children's book, I would think, much more younger. But I came up with this idea to have like children going to school and dealing with real serious issues that like real kids would go through, but kind of in a lighter manner so that it's a little bit less threatening. And I thought, well, how can I do that and make it less threatening to talk about this stuff? And the idea came to me to make them be animals, because maybe it's a little less scary.
Yeah.
So dealing with real life stuff. So I kind of started that storyline. I haven't done much with it because I've been so wrapped up in this book, but I wrote a few chapters of it. So we'll see.
I just had like the worst weird vision. Like I was talking to someone earlier today. Are you familiar with Louis C.K. at all?
That's familiar.
Stand-up comedian. He does this whole bit about how we're so lucky because we're at the top of the food chain. Imagine like waiting at the bus stop and having to run through cheetahs. Oh, cheetahs at the fucking bus stop. And like it just like you were saying that, I'm just visioning like elk at school being like, "Oh, cheetah's got my mom."
It'd be a real serious problem too.
Yeah. Just really twisted, but that's what I'm bringing on, unfortunately.
No, and actually, I mean, I would love to. I don't know nothing about screenplay writing. Otherwise, I would write a screenplay myself. But I really don't know anything about that structure. So I don't want to really delve into that because I consider myself a novelist now. So,
right.
But I actually have been in touch with a young guy that lives in California, and he's going to grad school right now for that, for movie writing, for screenwriting for movies. So he and I have been in touch, and
that's a weird process too. I had a friend of mine that was his internship was a script reader, so he would just sit and read scripts.
Wow.
And I'm like, what was that like? Torture.
Really? Oh, I think it would be fun.
So that's kind of what I was like. Oh, that must be so cool. He's like, it's awful. He's like, think about all the bad movies that come out. I'm like, yeah. He's like,
oh yeah.
There's way worse. And I'm like, oh yeah, I really do like that. They're horrible. And so like, alright, asking me questions. I'm like, well, what are the ones? He's like, well, I recommended. I think he said the entire time he's there, he recommended 2.
Wow.
And he said one was really good, and so each time he recommended, they kept pulling to the office. They were like, you recommend so few. We want to know what about these. And the one that he recommended it, and they're like, why did you recommend this? He's like, I feel like you guys can make money off it and people would go see it. And, not like it's not great, but I just feel like it's good enough that you guys can make some money off it. And so then I'm like, oh, did you read any of the King movies? And he's like, yeah, Matt, you heard anything? You listened to one of them?
Really?
And I'm like, was it the one you recommended? He's like, no. So it was like some crappy movie that he was in, and just and just the whole part of like Hollywood that you never even occurred to me. Yeah, someone has to read every script that's submitted.
But yeah, that is true. Yeah, I've never thought about it that way, but yeah, it makes sense. It's like there are a lot of bad books out there too. When I first started writing. Especially fantasy, I was like, well, what else is out there? What else is getting published so I can compare? So I bought a lot of, and this was, before I had my e-reader, so I bought a lot of them in paperback.
Yeah.
And I get, 50 pages in, and I think, oh gosh, I'm so tired.
Do you have that commitment though, where you're like, I bought this, I need to finish it?
No, I don't. They're still sitting in my bookshelf. Yeah. I tell myself, oh yeah, eventually I'll finish them, but I never have. So I don't know. I think there was, for me, like, when I started writing it, there was definitely stuff, like certain types of writing style that I knew that I hated. Like, I'm not a fan of what they call urban fantasy, which is modern day, everything's happening right now, they talk like we do right now.
Yeah.
I really, really can't stand that style, so...
so you want, like, fantasy. I keep going back
Like
to sorcery.
Yeah,
That's what I enjoy.
it is. It's more old-fashioned, you know, kind of typical old-fashioned, really, storylines and like older time periods or different worlds that are slightly less modern.
Have you ever seen? And my son was obsessed with this movie for a while, and I thought it was really unique. It was the Spiderwick Chronicles.
Oh yeah, yeah. I haven't actually read them. I've heard a lot about them, and I think I read maybe the first half of one of them, and then didn't finish it. But not because I didn't like it. I think I was just busy at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, those were good.
I've seen the movie about 50 times, and if I catch it once in a while, I'll still watch it.
I remember thinking they were decent. That and the one about Nanny McPhee. I think it's Nanny McPhee. I'd like to read that at some point. I still haven't read that.
I've seen the movie once. I see a lot of movies with my kids. And so there's a lot of...
And Lemony Snickets, is that how you say that?
Yeah. And I heard they were doing that or something. Because they did the one with Jim Carrey.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of, like pieces of the
it.
movies and stuff, and I think to myself, oh yeah, I'd like to read like the book that goes with that, but I felt like they ran out of time.
I felt like that book would probably be a lot, like I felt the movie had a lot of potential, but didn't quite, was relying a lot on Jim Carrey to be Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
But, and I know it went on beyond that movie. But I thought it was an interesting premise, and I would
that in the Pettigrew School of Unique Children or something.
That's like coming. Is that
out? Yeah, that's like a movie that just came out, I think. And I found the book at a
every time I see it, it looks like X-Men to me. It's
like, it looks interesting. I'll tell you after I read the book.
Oh yeah, definitely. So what other books? We talked about Tolkien and Harry Potter. Like, are there other books that really kind of hit home?
There's a lot. I mean, when I was growing up.
Are you a Game of Thrones fan?
Game of Thrones, yeah. How could you not like fantasy and not like Game of Thrones? I mean, come on. It's awesome. It's got zombies and dragons. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
My husband and I both loved the show, and I read 3 of the 4 books so far. So, and then we got to the point where we were past them on the show. So I was like, okay, let me just finish the show, and then I'll go back and finish reading the book. I can't do both at the same time.
Because now I think they're going to end up diverging because
they're
books
beyond
now or something.
Yeah, you can write them fast enough.
Honestly, I think like season and a half behind.
Oh, really?
Show, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
So you don't even know.
No.
You don't even know.
My boss keeps giving me crap.
So
She said, you need to get caught up.
Yeah, you do.
Because I always binge watch stuff. So like, I'll sit and I'll binge watch something.
We don't have cable. We have Netflix and Hulu. So
we use Netflix and Amazon.
Amazon.
Yeah. Have you seen Man in the High Castle?
No.
Oh my god.
Is that right?
So good. It is kind of it's written by Philip K. Dick. It is kind of a what-if story, and it's what if America lost World War II.
Oh, cool.
So about 2/3 of the country is controlled by Germany, and the last third is controlled by Japan.
Wow.
And there are propaganda films that are being leaked.
Yeah. Cool.
And so it's kind of like this whole underground movement controlling these, or distributing these films. And there's definitely a sci-fi aspect to it, because there are things that are happening in these films that happen.
Yeah.
So they put out season 1 and left it on a huge cliffhanger. And I believe season 2's trailer is up. So,
oh, cool. We'll have to catch that one.
Yeah, it's exceptional.
We've been watching Daredevil on Netflix now this season. That's actually better than we thought it was going to be, so that sounds good.
I'm not a big Daredevil fan, but right when the first episode, like the first 10 minutes, when he's like, I'm not asking for forgiveness for what I've done, I'm asking for forgiveness for what I'm about to do. I'm in. I'm sold.
The guy that plays him is fantastic.
He's great.
He really, really owns the show, you know? And you totally believe he's blind. You would never guess. He never drops that. So.
Have you seen Stardust?
I have, yeah.
Because he's in that as well.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he's Tristan. He's the main character.
I'll have to rewatch it.
I love that movie.
Yeah. I haven't watched that.
To me, it's not like, but it's all the same emotional notes of Princess Bride.
Princess Bride, I love that movie.
I mean,
I was just gonna say.
How can you not?
Yeah.
That's like such a
It's fantastic. I'd like to read the book of that too because I bet it's slightly different.
It's very different. It is written as though someone is talking about another book called Princess Bride.
Oh, interesting.
And like there are more chapters that they're like, yeah, they're not interesting, so my grandfather would skip over these parts.
Oh, funny.
And there's a whole thing in there about Prince Humperdinck having a giant, you know where the albino is? There's a whole, like, murder zoo.
Oh, wow.
Where he would go and hunt animals. It's really good. I like it a lot.
Yeah, albino's weird, for sure.
So, research. Where are we at with the Snicket?
Oh, I'm way past. Sorry. I got distracted.
We have one job.
No, I found it. I just got distracted. You guys were talking.
Are they working on it?
Netflix is remaking it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, with Patrick Warburton, the guy you cannot remember from last time,
I remember his name now.
Lemony Snicket.
Oh, that's really interesting.
It's also got Neil Patrick Harris.
Oh, yeah.
It's got to be amazing.
And literally, and Joan Cusack and a whole bunch of...
Joan? Okay, that's cool too. Yeah, they're both.
And nobody else I recognize.
That's going to be amazing.
That's awesome. Actually, I think I remember, now that you say that, I think I remember H talking about it on his Twitter.
Have you read his autobiography?
I haven't.
I have not yet.
Is it funny or is it serious?
Neil Patrick Harris. Yeah. So,
But is it funny or serious? He's actually a lot more serious than you would expect.
Well, here's the thing. Again, I haven't read it, and I'm kind of dying to. Have you ever heard the stories, the series books called Choose Your Own Adventure?
Yeah, oh my god, I love those.
Choose Your Own Adventure.
Really?
So
that's awesome.
At critical points in his career, he could make the choices either that he made.
Awesome.
So as soon as I read that, I'm like, oh my god, I want to do that. So I mean, come back.
Have you watched the sing-along vlog?
Dr. Harville's?
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Have you ever
tweeted to him, and you don't expect to get a reply back from him, especially stars, but I tweeted to him, and I was like, every day I cross my fingers and pray that they'll make a Dr. Harville too, and he liked it, or sent a smiley face back, cool. And I was like, oh,
that's
so
awesome. Excited. Yeah, there were fan-made films that went along with that, and have you ever seen the one, Turmoil?
Yeah.
I
don't think I've seen
it. He is a Moyle, and his supervillain name is Turmoil, and him and his crew's evil plan is to cut.
You should probably explain what a Moyle is.
It's a Jewish rabbi that does the breasts.
Yeah, it's a Jewish that does circumcisions.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And their evil plot is to cut the tip off the Washington Monument. It's genius. It's on YouTube. You can look it up. It's so.
I was bummed they took it off Netflix. It was on there for a long time, and then they took it off. And really bummed. I really needed cheering up one day, and I was like, I think I'll watch Dr. Harville's sing-along vlog.
I watch How I Met Your Mother a lot. Just kind of.
Yeah, except dude, I was so bummed in the last season of that. The way that they ended it, I was like.
I will agree completely.
Really?
Yeah. To me, I'm not going to say spoiler because if you haven't seen it, that's your fault.
It's been forever.
Yeah. I feel like Robin and Barney belong together.
Yeah, I kind of see that too, but my thing was I felt like they dragged out the entire season with nonsense when they could have spent time showing them together,
right.
And it would have been...
Yeah, it was very much like that last episode was like, oh, and so, we were together, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, Okay,
and it was rushed kind of in the last episode, so I was not a fan of the way it ended. I really liked up until season 6. And then after season 6, like midway through season 6.
Did you go 7 seasons?
8.
8.
So, halfway through season 6, I was kind of done.
I binge watched the entire thing, and now I just kind of want to feel like something kind of non-committal I put it on.
That one
is... The Ducky Tie's my all-time favorite. That's the best part.
I love the one, I think it's the St. Patrick's Day one, when they go to that club and it's called Okay Awesome or whatever.
And is that the one where they decide that bad deeds are rewarded that night and Ted ends up running up someone else's tab?
No, it's not that one. It's the one when Barney and his... No, not Barney. What's her name there? the short girl and her husband there.
Allison
Marshall
Hannigan.
and yeah. So they decide they need to be more grown up, so they're hosting a wine and cheese night with these ridiculously
they
boring
escape
people.
out of the bathroom. Yes.
End up pitching their own party.
Yes.
And the rest of them are at this club called OK Awesome, and it's like the music's ridiculously loud so they can't hear each other, and Barney ends up dancing with this girl who turns out to be his cousin.
His cousin, right, yeah. And Ted ends up in the coat room.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that episode. It's one of my favorites.
It is a great.
That and the one with the car, when the car dies, that one's hilarious too.
Oh, and the tape.
Yeah, the tape.
Yeah. There's so many great things. For a good, year, I played Zitch Dog with my kids. And I'm like, oh, let's play Zitch Dog. And they're like, what's that? I'm like, it's on this show. And to this day, every once in a while, I was like, Zitch Dog.
That's funny.
So it's just such a great show. So
yeah, it was really good. And that was one of the first comedy shows because I'm really not a fan of the half-hour comedies ever since Friends went off the air, because Friends was my all-time favorite.
Yeah.
And to me, yeah, nothing else compared to Friends because, that was the best. So I tried to watch all these other ones, and I could not. My brother was really into 2.5 Men. I could not get into it at all.
It's okay. I feel like a lot of them are so formulaic that it's just oh, this is the one where they get stuck in a bathroom, or this is the one where...
That's the thing. I feel like a lot of them were copying stuff that they've done on Friends, and I was like, well, they already did this stuff. But How I Met Your Mother was definitely one of the few that...
It was very different.
Yeah. I picked up and actually watched it and liked it.
And I don't know what this says about me, but I feel like all the sitcoms that I really, really like had a Barney Stinson-esque character.
Yeah, Rules of Engagement. Have you seen that one?
No, I've never seen that.
David Spade plays the Barney-esque character in it. And
really?
It's hilarious.
But Spin City.
Oh, yeah.
With Alan Ruck.
Yeah, I never got into that one either. That was kind of before my time or
Alan
whatever.
Ruck was just like a scumbag, sleazy, almost like, why did they hang out with this guy kind of thing. And my all-time favorite, and this is probably partly because, I watched it when I was a lot younger, but Night Court.
Oh, yeah.
Dan Fielding.
Yep. Man, I watched that when I was really young, but it was still good and funny.
Yep.
I'm sure a lot of the jokes were way more adult than what I thought at the time.
But and the funny thing is, the things that I now see from it are the actors who were on it. Frank Spiner's first role, Data from Star Trek, was on Night Court.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's just weird stuff like that. Yeah. Well, we got on track. Let's go back. So your book in book format is coming out in the near future.
End of November.
End of November. Where would people be able to find that?
They tell me
really. Where are bookstores now?
They tell me to say anywhere fine books are sold.
Yeah.
But yeah, where is that exactly? Well, Barnes & Noble, obviously, they're the biggies that still have stores.
Yep.
Amazon, you can order it. And then anywhere that you can order, downloaded books. The only, quote-unquote bookstore that won't have it is Books A Million, because they're apparently, have issues with them.
Deal with it.
So,
I never even heard of them.
They're a southern thing.
There is no bookstore.
Yeah, no, I know. Well, it's kind of sad. I mean, I was looking up on Google to see where around here that I could physically go and say, hey, I know you're a small bookstore, but would you want to carry my new book that's coming out? And I looked it up, and there's, none. I mean, I think there's maybe 2 on the Cape that are closed down, and then...
But that is something that you may consider is you go to comic book stores and offer to appear, not necessarily carry the book, because to them that's more of an event and kind of more hands-off. And we could talk Mike about that, about some recommendations, movies and names and stuff.
Good.
I was talking with Tony earlier about Free Comic Book Day. There's a comic book shop that invites creators down.
Oh, cool.
And they have a big event. Just go and a few copies and sell and talk to people. And,
sounds really good.
Yeah.
I'd like to
provided weather's good because all the creators are out in the parking lot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'd love to do that kind of stuff. And go to, I've been invited to a few schools to talk to some of the middle schoolers and high schoolers and stuff, so I'll be doing that as well. Just about, writing a career. But yeah, I mean, anything like that is great because it puts your name out there, it puts your your product out there, but it lets people know who you are.
Yeah, and I feel like things like that. I feel people are more apt to buy something when they can meet the creator, talk to the creator, and get that. Like, hopefully, this will have some benefit because people get to kind of know you a little bit. Be like, oh, she seems cool. Oh, I love the movies that she's into, and
I
I
hope so.
I think that gives you better insight into what the book will be like.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and the book is very, it's creative and it's fantasy. It's a different world, but it's very me. I'm take it as you see it kind of person. So
there's elves that have an apartment.
Well,
have a coffee shop.
No, wish maybe if it was modern day.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I think like I'm a pretty genuine person. So I think my writing style is pretty open and genuine, but good and fun and readable. And it's been nice to hear that the adults that I've had read it so far have liked it as much as the young people have. So that's awesome to me that, I've had, I'm granted he's my dad, but he doesn't have to say this. He read it. He's not a fantasy guy. He's never read any fantasy. He didn't like fantasy, and he got all the way through it and said, I can't wait to read the second one. And it really helped me the whole time.
Parents have, see, this is my, and this comes from a parent, is they have to say it, but being a kid, you can tell when they mean it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, my kids, there's always times where you're like, oh, yeah, it's really great. And then there's other times where you're like, that's freaking awesome,
Well, that's, I mean, I was expecting him to be like, oh, yeah, it was good for you. But, I mean, he genuinely really liked it and felt that it was, relevant and remarkable.
He's a little biased.
Yeah.
Did you charge him for the book?
No, he offered to buy it, though. And I was like, Dad, really, you don't have to.
We had a musician on a few weeks prior to this whose CD he had shipped to his parents' house. And when he showed up, he drove up immediately and opened it up. And his father took one. And he goes, that's $10. And he's like, what?
Man,
bullshit.
fresh.
Yeah. So let's have that blog post one last time so our listeners can find you and all your locations online.
Yes, it's Laura Thompson, author.blogspot.com.
And so you said kind of figuring out our podcast and what things are going to be kind of our standard. And one thing I've been asking, which I kind of feel is kind of repetitive now because we always talk about influences during the podcast. So I'm not going to ask you something influential because I feel like that's kind of heavy. But I've been asking, what's one thing that you're watching, listening to, reading, or something that you're digging right now that you'd recommend, but not there to
Well, I love Walking Dead, and I didn't think that I would, but I do. And other than that,
who's your favorite character?
One. I'm still sad about it.
Who's your favorite live character?
I guess Daryl.
You read the comic at all?
I haven't read the comic. No, my husband always tells me, "Oh, this isn't like the comic. They did this different." I'm like,
it is and it isn't.
But yeah, that, and then in terms of reading, I have a 3-year-old, so finding time to read is a little difficult, and I'm trying to edit my 3rd book now, so I'm doing that. But I'm reading a lot online. A lot of, just posts from people and articles that people put up and things like that about a lot of different topics because I just feel like I've been kind of removed from, mainstream society for a long time.
Yep.
And kind of pushed against, don't read the news and all this kind of stuff. But now I'm trying to be more involved and more educated about things that are going on because I'd like to instill that in other people as well. So.
Well, thanks for coming down.
Thank you.
I'm glad that you came to our Cameras and Cocktails night.
Yeah.
So you can check that out. I just realized I didn't do any of my plugging our stuff in the last podcast.
I really like the canvas or the landscape drawings though, and nature drawings that we do in paintings. So
for our listeners, if you're into art and in the Plymouth area, you can check out our life drawing the first Monday every month at the New World Tavern. It's $8. We provide the model, and you bring whatever you feel like working in. I suggest getting there prior to 7. It starts at 7. We're getting to the point where we're trying to figure out seating.
That's good.
Yeah, it was great. It's been growing exponentially, and so that's been very exciting. For our other events, you can go to Inebri-art.com and check out there. We have pop-up art shows, painting classes. We hang art in various businesses downtown, and we have other things going on, so you can always check out our event calendar there.
The wine and paint nights are what I recommend.
The canvas and cocktails, yep. They are a lot of fun. Yep, it's a really good time. We have a lot of fun, and we don't take ourselves too seriously. I mean, that's important for those nights. Also, check out our past podcasts on iTunes. Please take the time to rate it and comment on it so we can kind of get our rating bumped up. And if you have any questions, comments, insults, or whatever, you can email them to inebriart@yahoo.com. And Laura, thank you again for coming down.
Thank you so much for having me, Andy.
Cool. Awesome.
Appreciate it.